Starting off this hour, out of the shadows of military limbo and into the spotlight of American political debate. For years, the government has ignored cries to close Guantanamo Bay and end the indefinite detention as well as the torture at that facility. But U.S. officials and American public are now paying attention. So what did it take? A massive drawn-out hunger strike involving over 60% of the detainees, 23 of whom are now being force-fed through nasal tubes. The Guantanamo Bay hunger strike is entering its third month and still no end in sight. Negotiation attempts up to this point have failed, and the situation is becoming a life or death decision for many of these detainees. So what will it take for this standoff to be resolved? Joining me now is Colonel Morris Davis, a professor of law at Howard University. Thank you so much for joining us. So we've been hearing about this hunger strike for 3 months now. And first there were very few reports coming out, and then it grew and grew and grew. What is it going to take to end this hunger strike?
Well, I think right now the administration has two bad choices. It's either force feed people, which is in violation of medical ethics, or just stand there and let them die. I think the solution is to honor their word and close Guantanamo. As you know, a majority of the men at Gitmo have been cleared to be transferred out. 86 of the 166. So I think if they landed a plane, put the 56 Yemenis that have been cleared that the Yemeni government wants back, send them home, and I think that would end the hunger strike if they saw some positive steps forward and not just being forgotten for years. And
let's talk about the short-term demands of these detainees. As I understand it, it first started off with them just wanting their cells to not be searched and for proper handling of their holy text, the Quran. Is there anything else that's coming out of this?
Well, I think part of it as well has been the just being forgotten. They've spent, in some cases more than a decade sitting there, in many cases cleared for years and being held because of their citizenship. And I think it was a sense of frustration. So it started over the searching of the Qurans, and I think it spread beyond that to an opportunity to get some attention called to their plight. And it's unfortunate. It's a sad commentary on America that it takes putting your life in jeopardy to get anyone to pay attention.
At the same time, we've seen so many people, we've heard of cases of detainees dying while in their custody at Guantanamo Bay, and that didn't change policy. So if one or two or several of these inmates and these detainees actually die, will it change anything?
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, you're right. More people have died at Guantanamo than have been convicted at Guantanamo. So, I mean, that's not the way to thin out the population, is by attrition. But, the president brought this up last week at his press conference, said he still wants to close it, said all the right things, laid out all the right reasons for why it's a bad idea. We started a petition. It'll be a week tomorrow, and we've had almost 150,000 people at change.org/close GTMO that have come on board and said it's time to close Guantanamo. So there's no good reason to keep it open. I mean, fiscally, policy-wise, legal-wise, there is no good reason to keep Guantanamo open.
Now, you brought up two good points. One thing I do want to ask you is, why do you think it is that President Obama keeps reiterating this promise to close it, and yet no action has been done? What could he or the American people possibly gain from those reiterated promises?
Well, just the words aren't going to do anything. It's going to take some action. And he's said the right words since 2007. That, he wants to close Guantanamo, that it's an abomination, it's a discredit to the country, it does a lot of harm, it's a recruiting tool for extremists. So he said the right thing for a number of years, and I hope perhaps maybe what's happened, particularly maybe as he sat at President Bush's library dedication, where people discussed the Bush legacy, maybe it made him stop and think about the Obama legacy. Does he want to be remembered as the president that condemned Guantanamo and then for 8 years kept it open?
Now, I do want to bring up a chart kind of showing the number of inmates that are currently residing in the Guantanamo Bay detention facility. So as we can see, from 2002 to 2013, the numbers have gone down. There's still people there, but the numbers are going down. Is this possibly a forward movement, in your opinion, or is it the fact that it's still open a black mark on the U.S.?
Well, I think it's a black mark on the U.S. I mean, if you look recently, you had China issued a human rights report where it criticized the U.S. for Guantanamo. You had President Putin in Russia. When the U.S. blocked diplomats from coming here, he said, who's the U.S. to criticize us when they have Guantanamo? So there's no real upside to keeping it open. I mean, we have prisons here that can handle the detainees that need to be confined. We have federal courts that have successfully prosecuted hundreds of terrorism cases while the military commissions have floundered for 11 years. We've got 86 people that have been cleared for transfer. We need to send them home. The ones that can't leave, like the Chinese Uyghurs, Bermuda took in some detainees. The U.S. has never taken a one. I mean, we're supposed to be the home of the brave, so we ought to be at least as brave as Bermuda.
And finally, I want to ask you about your petition very quickly. You said that you have 155,000 signatures, is that right?
No, we're approaching 150. I looked just a little bit, it was 147,000 and change, but we're approaching 150,000 after less than a week.
That's quite impressive. And after 100,000 signatures, if I'm correct, the president has to respond, right?
Well, this is on change.org.
Are you going to move it to a place where the president needs to respond?
I don't know. I mean, hopefully this will make him pay attention that this isn't just a, you know, the liberal left. I mean, there have been a lot of people that have come on board and signed, retired admirals, retired judge advocates generals of the service, retired State Department and intelligence community folks, Nick Kristof from the New York Times. A lot of folks have come on board and signed this petition urging him to keep his word and close Guantanamo once and for all.
Well, if there's one thing that we are learning is that this is just the beginning of a very long process, and in order to close it, we're going to have to see how it develops. But obviously, these men, these detainees that are on the hunger strike are not backing down. Colonel Morris Davis, he is a professor of law at Howard University. Thank you for joining us.